I'm coming home, coming home. Tell the world
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to have an opportunity to share with you again this evening. This is your Go for Diamond call. And we're very fortunate this evening. We have very special guests that we want to introduce to you. Many of you obviously know of her. Tammy will actually introduce Bobbi in a minute. One thing that's very important before we introduce Bobbi on the call, the purpose, as you know, every time Tammy and I organize a Go for Diamond call, it's always to give you another nugget that you can utilize to build your business, adding some tools and knowledge and any kind of information that can support your building efforts. And that's what the calls are designed to do. And this evening, as you saw on the title earlier, how to deliver use value that's bigger than the cost. As you know, people are very caught up with the inflation and pricing and everything else, not realizing that there is also an interesting opportunity behind that. But the point is the value of what we bring to the table when it comes to our product, the inland consumer, is so high. But often people will compare us to some very kind of cheap, and again, no disrespect meant to sidekick products, but things that are in Walmart, in Walgreens, and the grocery stores, and they really have no idea what they have in the palm of their hands. It could actually change their lives, the lives of everybody they care about within their ecosystem, their social environment. And that's what tonight we want to talk about. So Tammy, I'm going to turn this over to you, share your thoughts and introduce our guest speaker this evening.
Absolutely. Bobbi and I, we've been working together for quite a while. We really got to know each other when we launched our beauty line in Ghana. And we've been communicating back and forth so often. And I'm super excited, Bobbi, that you're part of the corporate part of the company, because it is needed and people need to see the value. And you have so much extensive background on health. And you're a registered, you're a DNA specialist, registered health professional, and we're excited that you're part of the corporate world. VP of Wellness and Healthcare right now. And I know, Bobbi, when we were in Ireland, you had mentioned that you're up to many things that you're going to be sharing with all of us in the near future that's going to help us take our business to another level when it comes to working within the professional realm in the health and wellness field. So I'm going to let you take over from now and share with everybody the discussion that we've had and what you've put together for the field today.
Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate so much. It's fun to see all of you again. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen each other on Zoom, so it's fun to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and actually start the slideshow. If I can move one thing over here, I can get it to start. It always works better in practice, right? Is everyone able to see that screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So one of the things that Tammy and Chris had asked me to talk about was, really the value proposition of what we have, because I can tell you that I've been a practitioner with Smart DNA for 6 years. I work as a cardiovascular consultant, and I've done that for 6 years. And just recently joined the Max corporate team as the Vice President of Corporate Wellness and Healthcare Professional Division. So that's a really exciting thing for me to get to do. And I will say that, you never imagine that in your 7th decade of life that you're going to get to do fun stuff like this. And I have to tell you, it's just been an incredible experience for me. But when we talk about the value, this is where I get really excited, because not everyone really understands what they have in their hands. Sometimes you almost have to be like in the healthcare world to understand completely. So we're going to talk about some of the basic stuff. just like you, I have a family budget. I have to decide where I'm going to invest my dollars. I try to be very judicious and I invest wisely. I've never owned a home that was more expensive than I could afford. We shop for groceries and buy clothing just like everyone else does, and we're not extravagant. We tend to drive very reasonable vehicles. Actually, I always buy a used vehicle rather than a new one. We protect ourselves with insurance to make sure that we're covered there. We always set aside a little bit for entertainment, but I have to tell you, you get to a certain age and all of a sudden you're very aware that you have to spend your money wisely on any of the healthcare services you have, whether it's the doctor you go to, or it's the prescription medications that you take a look at. And if you have to shop for your prescription medications, you shop wisely, you compare, you figure out the discount programs. We always want to make sure that we get the best value for our dollar. And so I'm going to show you something that some of you have seen this shot before, but this is what a genotype looks like. And it's kind of the foundation of the architecture that we look at when we do a DNA report. So we look at something called ApoE. And based on ApoE, I can determine through a report what your risk is of certain diseases, specifically cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, diabetes, and whether or not you're at higher risk. And if you take a look at the screen, and I don't know if my cursor will actually show up and you can see where that goes, but you can see in this that it's broken up into sections. So ApoE, E2, E2 has all 4 cysteine molecules. And cysteine is going to be a word that we come back to. It's going to be important. And then as you go further down, you notice that it changes. And all of a sudden, when you're ApoE4, E4, all you have is arginine in that spot rather than cysteine plus arginine or cysteine by itself. The reason that that's important is cysteine is very, very important for your overall well-being, to be able to eliminate toxins, to be able to really live a much healthier life. And quite honestly, there are differences in ethnicity as to how this architecture looks. So without you knowing what your architecture is, knowing what your DNA looks like, probably supplementing so that you can get more cysteine into your cells could be really important, could be important long term. So the very first time I knew anything about glutathione, my response was, what? What was that? I don't understand. Spell that for me. And I became a student of glutathione. And I learned very quickly that glutathione is made up of 3 amino acids. And you see that cysteine is the one that I put in red. We have lots of glycine and glutamic acid in our diets, but cysteine is what we lack. And if you take a look at the organs that are most dependent on having lots of glutathione, those are pretty important organs too. The heart, the lung, the liver, the kidneys, the brain, and the skin. So if you want to see how well someone is aging and whether or not they have enough glutathione, take a look at their skin. We don't get to see each other's livers and hearts and lungs necessarily. We do get to see how well the brain functions, but skin is a telling mechanism for knowing how well someone is aging. Glutathione is your body's master antioxidant. You get antioxidants from the food you eat. You certainly get vitamin C and vitamin E, and you get really good antioxidants from things like berries. Think about blueberries and strawberries, and you get really good quality foods, and all of a sudden your antioxidant level goes up. But it's what your cells produce that's the key. And glutathione is what your cells produce. So if you can maximize your production, if you can get more of that cysteine molecule into your cells, you just produce more. But here's why that is so important, because it defends against free radicals, oxidative stress, chemical toxins, things like radiation and heavy metals. It also supports your immune system, which of course everyone is just so dependent right now as we are still battling a pandemic. So important that we maintain our immune systems. and cellular inflammation. You know, every disease state begins with inflammation. So if you can control inflammation by increasing your glutathione levels, sounds pretty important. It sounds like the investment that I decided I was going to make when I found out about glutathione. So it's critical to every healthy cell in your body. And quite honestly, as we get older, I want to have healthy cells. I don't want to have to pay for disease. And that is where the value comes in. Because as we age, we decline in production. So at the age of 20, we make adequate glutathione. Most of us do. Genetically, some of us don't, but most of us make a lot of glutathione. I don't know about you, but I could party when I was 20. By the time I got to 40, I couldn't party quite as long, quite as hard, or quite as late. And I have a feeling that I have some compadres in that one. So all of a sudden, you're finding that you're turning in at 11 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock. So we decline in production as we age, but here's the other thing that happens. Oxidative stress goes up because our bodies are aging, and that is what also increases disease. I'd like to avoid disease for as long as I can. Now, one of the things I used to do was I worked in clinical research, and I used to do chart reviews. And I can tell you, I had some charts that I reviewed of people in their 40s and 50s, and they were taking 10 and 12 prescription medications, which was shocking to me. But it's because of inflammation and disease. So let's take a look at that. So as the body ages, you have this time-related deterioration. It's just physiology. It's just what happens to the body. But as our glutathione declines, and it compounds over time, so it's not just the decline that's the problem, it's the inflammation that occurs and then how we choose to handle it. Unfortunately, it is compounded by disease and medications. And I don't know any of us who don't have a lot of stress in our lives. But then you and I are probably exposed to more environmental toxins today than we've ever been in our entire lives. I mean, I know I live just outside of Houston, Texas, and I kind of dread going into Houston and having to drive the freeways, knowing that I'm going to be exposed to a lot of environmental toxins. We also have a large oil and gas industry here. So there are some parts of town, you just want to make sure that the windows are always rolled up and you are careful not to breathe a lot of the air in the area. But some of us are born with a genetic deficiency. Our cells just don't produce as much. And as I said, that can be genetic. It can be based on our ethnicity. So there are some people that just naturally don't produce as much. And that's where you need support and help. So what are some of the diseases that we kind of fear the most? The ones that we hear about the most, the ones that maybe we'd like to avoid. A lot of those, if we can support glutathione, it reduces our risk of developing those diseases. So here's, I have this list, and quite honestly, when I take a look at this list, I really don't want any of these things, but I do realize that it's important for me to support glutathione so I don't have to deal with these. Here's the next one. And if you take a look at some of the disease states, these are ones that we quite honestly want to avoid. And, I don't know of a better starting place than glutathione. So I'm going to tell you my story. When I first learned about glutathione and I first started supporting my system and I wanted to understand what it would do, my first experience was that I can tell you my brain started to buzz and I wondered what the heck was going on. I considered that I might be having a stroke. I was 58 at the time. So I was really quite concerned. That was 13 years ago. And I can tell you that when I started to experience that, the first thing I did, I put on my clinical research hat and I went to research. I went to pubmed.gov, and anyone can go to this site. You don't have to be a healthcare professional. So pubmed.gov, I plugged in the word glutathione. Now I can tell you, I reposted this page on the slide presentation today. When I first started looking at glutathione, there were about 83,000 citations, between 80 and 83,000. As of today, there were 169,737. So what that tells me is that there are a lot of researchers out there. that are trying to understand the connection between glutathione and disease. Why would they study that? I mean, why is that important? The reality is it's important because if we can control disease and we can help people live healthier longer, that's our goal. In healthcare, that's everyone's goal. We want people to maintain their health. So obviously, glutathione is being heavily studied by the scientific community. We know that. So I started taking a look at the cost of disease. And of course, heart disease is the number one, always has been, although in Canada it's number two. But the cost of heart disease in the United States to me is shocking. $229 billion was spent from 2017 to 2018. That was before COVID. So I can tell you, cardiovascular disease is a much bigger problem here in the United States since COVID. I don't believe you had as heavy a concentration of COVID in Canada as we had here, but considering that heart disease and stroke would be the leading cause of hospitalization and the second leading cause of death in Canada, and when you take a look at the number of dollars that are spent either trying to reduce the risk or reduce the risk of the aftermath of heart disease, $20.9 billion every year. That's a lot of money. People are investing a lot of money in disease. Then you take a look at diabetes, which is, it's typically number one, number two. Certainly, cost of diabetes in Canada has risen and is expected to continue to rise. And by 2020, it was $16.9 billion annually. And if you consider that 1 out of every $4 in the US is spent on caring for people with diabetes, and just look at the total here, $237 billion is spent directly on medical costs and another $90 billion on reduced productivity. That's a huge burden, and it's gone up 60% from 2007 to 2017. That is we're not getting ahead of this, is what I'm saying. So now we're starting to look at things like inflammation, and arthritis was one of the other things that cropped up, because this is where we're investing our dollars right now. We're investing our dollars in disease. And when you take a look at that, 24% of all adults, 58.5 million people have arthritis. That's just in the US alone. And when you look at the annual cost, again, another $303.5 billion. Those are really shocking numbers. And more than half of US adults, working age, this is age 18 to 64, have arthritis. These are really serious numbers, and this is from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We also have a health burden that's created by environmental toxins. And I can tell you, living here in Houston, it's something that I'm concerned about. But we get it from chemicals in our water. We have chemicals in our food supply. It's almost something that is ubiquitous that we cannot avoid any longer. And I tried to take a look at some of the disease states that were associated with environmental toxins. And here's a list. Immune dysfunction. Gee, I mean, that's something that we're really sensitive to these days, isn't it? Your immune system. Autoimmunity, asthma, allergies, all those things that quite honestly during COVID has become really center stage. Cancers, cognitive deficit. I don't know anyone who wants to decline mentally. Mood changes, neurological illnesses, changes in libido, which was shocking. Reproduction dysfunction is a problem. And glucose dysregulation, again, coming back to diabetes. Did any of us know that environmental toxins might interfere with your body's ability to produce insulin? So then I said, okay, let's take a look. Since COVID is in the news constantly right now, let's take a look at what happens with glutathione depletion, because quite honestly, in the early days of COVID, when we were sequestered in our homes for 3 months, I did a lot of research and I followed the experts. I didn't follow the wackadoodles, the ones that make crazy statements. I really dived into the science because I wanted to understand how the reports that I was getting back from people that I knew who were supporting glutathione, why were they remaining healthy? Why were they avoiding disease? And it very well could be that glutathione depletion was a Trojan horse for COVID-19. Those people who had depleted levels did not fare very well. Now, I think it's interesting because those people who I personally know who've had COVID got very mild cases, but those are also people that I know are supporting their glutathione. This was probably one of the most interesting studies that I read. Endogenous deficiency of glutathione. So endogenous is what your cells make. As the most likely cause of serious manifestations and death in COVID-19 patients. Well, think about it. Who were the first ones affected? Those ones who had compromised immune systems, typically the elderly, those people who had diabetes. And we know that every single one of those are affected by lack of glutathione, the lack of the body to produce it. So it seems to me that that might be pretty darn important at this point in time for us to understand the value, our disease value, or our health value by increasing glutathione production. And it all depends on how you spend your dollars. You know, I make an investment in my health so that I don't have to invest in disease. So I don't know about you, but I spend my dollars wisely. I can't spend them twice. So I invest every dollar carefully. So obviously we invest in good food. I mean, good food is the foundation of what we're supposed to be doing. We should be eating lean quality, really good proteins. We should be reducing our white carbs. We should increase our green carbs. And those are all the gorgeous fruits and vegetables that we get. We eat whole grains. We eat the really good foods first, and then we supplement. I know a lot of people think that supplementation takes place of good food. It doesn't. That's why it's called a supplement. And I get tickled when people will tell me that I take all kinds of supplements and then I watch what they eat and I'm just horrified because there's no way to supplement your way out of a bad diet. So start with an investment in good food and then supplement wisely. Again, I spend my dollars carefully, and that's why I have chosen to invest in supporting my cellular capability to get cysteine. And this is why ribocystine is my choice for supporting glutathione levels, regardless of age. And this is what I always recommend to my DNA clients, because it's the most unique and cost-effective technology that delivers that cysteine molecule into the cell so that your cells can make glutathione. That's your endogenous glutathione. So there is a patented process by which D-ribose is bonded to L-cysteine. The reason is that you want that cysteine molecule, because it's very fragile, you want it delivered into the cell intact. So that means in one piece, you want that cysteine along with the rate limiting factor sulfhydryl group. And if you were to see a picture of what a cysteine molecule looks like, there's this little dangly fragile piece that hangs off. But if there's a way to encapsulate it so that it can get all the way into the cell, you maximize your production of glutathione. I don't know about you, but I'd rather invest in something that is bonded, that gets into my cells, rather than wasting my money on pure cysteine, which about 10% gets absorbed. I'd rather invest in something that I know I'm absorbing. So there's also a little side benefit, and I probably am a testimony to this every single day. It's why I can work from sunup to sundown and still have energy to spare. I'm creating cellular energy at the same time as I'm producing glutathione, because that's the other benefit of ribocystine, is you're actually absorbing ribose, D-ribose into your cells so that your body can make adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. Absolutely magical. And, you know, I happen to be a science snob. I openly admit it. I didn't just believe the company science. I said, okay, I'm going to go do my research. I need to understand this. And I had to update this slide presentation because I just found out that we have now 54 independent clinical studies on ribocystine. And what's really amazing is these are not studies that have been funded by the company. A lot of companies fund their own research. And of course, they come to their own conclusions, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent. But these studies have all been funded by third party. That is pure science. And quite honestly, I can tell you that there probably wouldn't be any other way that I would have chosen to work with this company to put my reputation on the line, because it's really important that I know I can trust the science. And the science is impeccable. And here's why. Science really does matter. This is Herbert T. Nagasawa. He's my hero. He wears a lab coat. He's now 95 years old. I think this picture was taken of him like 5 or 6 years ago. 95 years old, amazing man. And he still is doing research. Now, what you have to know about him is that he worked for 45 years as both a bio and medicinal chemist. He is a pioneer in the field of glutathione. And if you didn't know, this is also the man that after the attacks here in the US on 9/11, he developed the 3-minute antidote to cyanide poisoning. He is an amazing scientist, and every single clinical research study on ribocystine must pass his purview, meaning he has to look at the protocol to make sure it's not just a fluff protocol. It has to be real. And trust me, he is a scientist. He's absolutely amazing. So this is a man I trust. I also trust that this compound has been patented, and it is actually in the statement of the patent. Ribocystine or ribosine is a method to enhance production of glutathione and ATP levels within cells of all mammals. Now you're going to ask me, do you give that to your dogs and cats? And the answer is absolutely. My dogs and cats are important to me. They're part of my family. So trust me, they get a little ribocystine. And what I like also is that there is a third-party validation of every batch. And if you ever have an opportunity to hear Scott Nagasawa talk about the quality procedure and what they actually do at the manufacturer's level to ensure that every single batch of what you get in any of the Max products is absolutely safe. In fact, they test for banned substances. It also has to pass the National Sanitation Act. So NSA is the other testing agency. So you are absolutely assured that what you're getting is pure, absolutely pure, and it's proven. So then I started looking at the areas of independent research that have been done. And this is over the 53 studies. So as you can see, it's very, very broad. There are a lot of scientists who say, you know what, I understand that glutathione is really important for memory. And I think that I can demonstrate that it would be effective for somebody who might be at risk for Alzheimer's. All of these studies are done independently. So if you take a look at this list, this is pretty wide-ranging. Chemoprotection, radiation exposure, cataracts, colitis, use as an anti-diabetic hypoglycemic agent. That is huge. For memory deficit, for atherosclerosis and cardiovascular health. Of course, that's a passion for me. Genetically, I come from a family with very, very poor cardiovascular health. My dad had his first massive heart attack at 52, and unfortunately, he died at 71. So I can tell you that it got my attention very, very quickly that this was being studied for cardiovascular health. I certainly have cardiologists here in the Houston area that work with cardiac testing, and they use the ribosine product in their practice because they know that it actually reduces the inflammation that they are able to witness and evaluate on a blood test. So pure and simple, they know it works. But when you start taking a look at things like wound healing, I mean, that got my attention because can you imagine if you went into surgery and you found out that if you took this compound before and after surgery, that it would improve how quickly you healed? All of these are independent research. And if you ever want to go take a look, you can go to ribocystine.com, and that's where you can see the list. Now, this particular page was not updated yet. It still says 53 studies because that was last week. So there are now 54, but you can go through and link every single one of these studies. You can go take a look. It's there, it's available. You can go and understand why this research is so important. And as I said, I wanted to see the science. I can read the science, but you know what? Everyone has eyes, and we can see that the wound healing study works. And this was done by Dr. Adam Saltman. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon. And I have to tell you that he has a little bit of a claim to fame, according to a plastic surgeon that I visited one day who happened to be a resident at the time that Dr. Saltman was doing cardiothoracic surgery. And he said, Bobbi, I've never seen anything like it. The man was doing surgery in between heartbeats. He said it was the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen. So we know that Dr. Saltman is credible. If you get a chance to go and take a look at the medical symposium he did, it's absolutely extraordinary. And then when you take a look at atherosclerosis, I mean, this is really important. Do you remember when we talked about ApoE? ApoE is that genotype. And if you're deficient, where you're just where that cysteine compound is not quite processing correctly, we now know that if you can start to supplement cysteine wrapped in D-ribose, that it actually improves your cardiovascular health. Pretty important. Though there are also some areas of cardiovascular health. There's a genetic component called lipoprotein A. And up until now, there really wasn't anything that could make a significant difference. I think based on this study that we might be onto something. And I fully expect, human clinicals to show this very soon. Also, the diabetes research. This was really important because there are a lot of people who have side effects from taking prescription meds. And if you can introduce something that is naturally produced within the body that actually helps to improve insulin sensitivity, sounds like a pretty good investment. And then I did a little bit more research about xenobiotics and how detoxification that is provided by glutathione, why that is so important. And if you take a look at the conclusion here, low levels of glutathione and or transferase activity are also associated with chronic exposure to chemical toxins and alcohol, cadmium exposure, AIDS and HIV, macular degeneration, Parkinson's disease, and other neurodegenerative disorders. It's a mouthful, but obviously glutathione is extremely important to reducing the risk that might happen as a result of that environmental toxin exposure. So if you get a chance, go to ribocystine.com. That's where you can see the medical symposiums. There have been 3 symposiums produced, and we have one coming up very shortly, sometime in August. And that will be a little bit deeper dive with Dr. Scott Nagasawa. But here's what we addressed so far. So the first symposium talked about genomic wellness. And remember, I told you I work with a molecular geneticist. Her name is Dr. Margie Smith. And Margie goes into a little bit deeper explanation about why glutathione is important for your genetic architecture. The second one, as I said, is wound healing study with Dr. Adam Saltman. And the third one is an education on the Max products and why it's so important that the formulations are put together the way they are. And, I've always said that the bottom line, it's not how much you take, it's how much you absorb, it's the bioavailability. If you cannot absorb any of the compounds that are in any of the products you take, then they're not doing you any good. And I know that there's bioavailability to all of the Max products. So that's the important part. I know that if you ingest any of them, you actually will absorb them. But if you want to know whether or not you might be deficient in glutathione, I've created a glutathione checklist. And it's just a really simple checklist, and you can go through it to decide if perhaps you might be deficient. And it allows you to kind of walk through some of the areas that, the telltale signs, as I call them, that would allow you to know whether or not you're producing enough. And I'll make sure that Chris has access to this checklist. And one of the things that I will always come back to, because I think it's so important, is that any type of dietary supplement, it doesn't matter what it is, it's not intended, according to the FDA, to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. What I'm suggesting is that glutathione, when you ingest any kind of a compound that supports glutathione production, you're going to start to reduce your risk of those things we talked about. Inflammation, you're improving your immune system, you're improving insulin sensitivity, you're reducing your toxic exposure load, and those things are all important. So if you have any questions, if you'd like to ask me any questions, please feel free to email me. My new email address is bhorne@max.com, and I'm happy for you to send me any questions. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tammy.
That is absolutely awesome. Okay, let me just go back here into share screen. Tammy, do you have audio?
I do.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to you. Let me just kind of turn and just kind of pin all of us here, because you may have, I believe you have some questions for Bobbi. Bobbi, this was absolutely amazing, and thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge. And again, this is the kind of thing that can really help. Sorry, folks, I know we're not showing here yet. I'm just looking for my, just bear with me 1 second here. We're coming. Okay,
We can see everybody, Chris.
Okay, good. Okay, so at the end of the day, what's going on here is understand that what Bobbi shared right now is a tool. It has been recorded, and it will be posted on the activeteamtraining.com under the playlist on Go for Diamond Calls, and also you can actually access it on Facebook, since it's also going on Facebook Live. And I just want to recognize and thank you everybody here from Facebook. We have Philippines, we have Canada, we have the United States, everybody from all over the world coming in and out, so with their comments. So the information is there, and the key here, and I know, Tammy, you have some questions, but the key that I really would want to stress is this is not the kind of tool you want to send to a prospect who doesn't know anything about who we are. This is something that you send after to establish the credibility on what it is we have. And at the same time, I do recommend that you come back and listen to these things. Don't just come to a webinar one time and listen to it and then just kind of close your books and move on. I suggest you come back and listen to this over and over and over, because there is a lot of wealth of information here that was shared by Bobbi, that if you even take 5% of what was shared here, and some of the conversation you may have, it could be the difference between someone walking away and someone becoming a customer, or even enrolling to become a partner with you. So this, again, is the kind of tool that we make available for you to educate you and to help you with your building efforts. Because remember that we are a company who distribute supplements all around the world. And it just happened that the supplements that we have is second to none, high class, backed up by science. And this, you can rest really comfortably on that. So Bobbi, I really appreciate this this wonderful information. So Tammy, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think you may have some questions for Bobbi. So please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I really love the checklist, Bobbi. We're doing some shows coming up. Many of the people that are here on the Zoom session are doing some shows, whether it's a trade show, a market. I know Janet's doing one of her markets in her local market every single Saturday. She's there promoting. So we get a lot of people, and festivals. We got 2 big festivals coming up. Ghana Fest. We've got the Humber Bay Fest right on the waterfront here, and we're doing CanFit Pro. So all of this stuff happening, we get so many people that are going by pretty fast. And so I know for myself personally, what can somebody say to somebody when you're just standing there at the booth? Give somebody an idea of what they can say to get somebody to come over to kind of have a look at what we're up to. Is there anything that you wanted to share that would just capture somebody's attention to want to look?
It's really funny because I don't know that there's a single one-liner.
Mhm.
I always try to engage people first by eyes. I mean, that's usually, and I usually ask them how they're doing. Are they enjoying the fair, whatever it is, whatever event that you're at, and ask them, have you ever heard the word glutathione before? Is that something that's even on your purview? Did you know about it? And it's starting to happen now where more people have actually heard about it. So if you can ask that one question, it makes a big difference. So I'm like, I market it within the medical community. My first question is, what are you doing inside your practice to help your patients make more glutathione?
Mhm.
Or what kind of glutathione therapy are you using? And it's always a question that, I've actually had clinicians correct my pronunciation. They said, you don't really mean that. That's not how it's pronounced. And I'd say, really? How would you pronounce it? And they come up with a completely different word. So that's happening less and less frequently, I have to tell you. So the medical community is getting more well-versed, but so are consumers. So there's been enough advertising now. There's been enough exposure. You hear enough integrative and functional medicine doctors. If anybody ever watches anyone like that on, Google or anything like that, you do get exposure. So if you ask somebody, what do you know about glutathione? And just watch them, just see what the reaction is. Sometimes that can just be a really, just a quick, and always smile when you say it, because quite honestly, it's going to generate some reaction, just like I had, like gluta what.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. As a matter of fact, I just recently on LinkedIn, I connected with a lady in Nairobi, and she's a nutritionist, and we have a Zoom session tomorrow. So I got some great screenshots that I'm going to be able to share with her. But that's one thing that she was saying, that they had lots of ideas for their patients, their clients. And some of them had come back to her saying, what do you know about glutathione? Is there something that you have for glutathione? So when I approached her to find out what she knows about glutathione, the connection was there immediately. So now we have a Zoom session tomorrow, and she wants to know about Max. She's never heard about Max International in Kenya. So yeah, and I'm really loving, we'll make sure that we have that glutathione checklist for those of you who are out there doing the sessions, the disease sheets. And I think all of that is going to add a lot of value, which is exactly what the purpose of this session is the use value and what's going on in today's world. That those numbers are pretty scary. And I didn't realize how high they were. So that was an eye opener for myself, just looking at your slideshow. So I think that we really need to deliver these messages. I think that's the key thing, and then provide them with information or invite them to one of your the Zoom sessions that are going on. There's so many Zoom sessions, presentations that people can tap into. So thank you so much. Does anybody else have a question for Bobbi?
Well, while maybe this is going on, Tammy, one thing I wanted to mention, Bobbi, you mentioned that you're going to be sending me that questionnaire, I believe. And
Yes.
What I will do is I'll make that available where we upload this particular call or this webinar session on the comments section. There will be a link there where you can actually download that document. So it will be available to you.
And just so you know, Chris, that was originally developed for the healthcare professional sales professionals to be able to interface with doctors. And when I looked at it and I said, this is a tool that everybody can use. It's probably it's a tool I developed a couple of years ago, but I've never shared. So it's just one that I decided that it was worth sharing with everyone to be able to utilize.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Beth just posted a question there. Is it okay for her or anyone that might have done some screenshots to share your slides through social media posting?
I would say it's probably okay as long as you are very careful the way you present it, because the reality is, the FDA does regulate how we connect the dots, right? And so you notice the majority of the presentation that I did was specific to glutathione and how glutathione impacts disease.
Yes.
I cannot, as a corporate representative, say that ribosine prevents disease. That would be against the law. That's not what we do. What we do is we allow the cells of the body to make more. So as long as you're very careful with what you say and you don't misrepresent that connection, it should be fine. But if you have any questions or doubts, you can just email me to ask.
Brilliant, brilliant. This is really good intel. And I totally agree, because we do have to be careful where, because if you take the slide in the wrong context, it could actually mislead the information. And we want to make sure that whoever sees that, especially the representative and the regulator, police out there, just want to make sure that they don't misinterpret what it is you're posting. But I'm glad that you posted that for clarity.
Yes, and the other part of that, Chris, is leave my credentials off, because that would then imply more than you probably want. Yeah. So just to be on the safe side, you could probably do a screenshot and post that, as long as you make sure that your language is very careful.
Yes, well said. And of course, these people here have been trained for years, but it's good to remind everybody. Brilliant. The one thing I wanted to mention as we end this session, Tammy mentioned about trade shows, and I spend a good week and organizing the back end. And I wanted to share this with you guys, not in this call, but I really recommend that you start organizing yourself, where Tammy and I, I'm going to give you the price that we're suggesting here in Canada, because remember, in Canada, we have the exchange rate and shipping and all the extra costs that we have. When in the US, maybe you obviously I would recommend you sell it a bit cheaper than what I'm about to share here. If you happen to be anywhere around the world, then of course you have to use the same assessment based on the cost of operation. And again, very quickly, what Tammy and I do, if we buy an X amount of, let's say, ATP or Bax Infuse, and then let's say we create a package of 3 or 5, simply what we do is if we buy, there's 60 in a package or 30 in a package or 15 in a package, whatever, then you just divide it by the amount that you paid. And then from there, you can determine the units and how much you should be charging. Now, my advice is, Tammy and I are not all that interested in making profit selling products. We're interested in having products in people's bellies. But in the same time, we want to make sure that people can get paid back for their investment, because not everybody has a lot of money to just blow and just give to everybody, right? It's not easy. It's not necessarily duplicatable. What's duplicatable is if someone invests $10 for the sake of discussion and they get the $10 back, so they can turn around and maybe they didn't make any profit, but a profit will come later when you start following up with people. So it's very important as you build your business, folks, that you prepare yourself and not be a secret agent. Get these products in people's hands and sell it for cost. For example, Tammy, you're going to create a small package of, let's say, 3 ATP or 3 Infuse, and we'll sell them for $10. And we'll have another package with basically, 2 more, and we'll sell it for $15. So they get better value if they spend $15 and they get 5 instead of 3, right? And we'll have another package for $50. That's in Canadian dollars, of course. And this would be the 1 week of cell GVD, 3 ATP, and 3 Infuse. And the other thing that I do to simplify that, we live in an electronic age. And there's a quick app and a little Square. Everybody's aware of that, square.com, right? That you can, well, I use actually Stripe. And the reason I've been using that for years and years and years as we did our events, and it's really, really simple. And I bought a little reader and I tested it. I put a buck on it, and it works. I tapped it with my phone with Apple Pay, with credit cards. It works perfectly well. You can insert a credit card in there. And in that, when you go, for example, to stripe.com or Square, I don't use Square, but you might, doesn't really matter. And it's really simple to take a little picture of your packages, upload them into the software, and then just put the price. And if you want to include your tax, I suggest have a round price, everything included. It's easy for people. And then they just tap and walk away. And your sales will increase. The prospect that will be walking away with products there'll be more. And this in return, when it comes down to harvest, as you follow up, you'll be a lot more profitable due to the fact that you may end up with some customers that will come regularly. It would become an auto ship customer, or could become an associate. So I just wanted to add this as a tail end to this particular training call when it comes to the creating the value for what we have to offer here. is to also be prepared to for people to walk away with your products and not always walking empty-handed with a piece of paper or a text or an email, right? And if you want to make sales, you want to grow your business, you want your products in people's hands. So it's just, again, food for thought. So Tammy, is there any last words you want to end with as we finish the session?
Yeah. So if you go into the board section, again, we're always evolving on the boards. Go check out Canada US folder. And in the folder, you're going to see trade shows. We wanted to create a simple system of marketing materials so that people just go in the folder and this is what I need to print to prepare myself for every event. We have the disease sheets in there, 2 of them on 8.5 by 11. So you cut that in half. We can even make it smaller, but it's just harder to read. I'm going to have Marcel add that glutathione checklist. I think this one's really critical when people are walking away and they're going so fast. I mean, you're going to try and build relationships. And like Bobbi said, you smile and you have a simple conversation, and then you ask them what they know, or if they ever heard the word glutathione. It's such a simple thing to say and to remember. And then it starts a conversation. And from there, you're going to have a gift basket. You want them to have an opportunity to win something. And what Chris and I are doing, just for everybody to know what we're up to, is every single event, festival, trade show, whatever we're doing, we have an in-home 3 days after. Because we want to make sure that we're following up. We're inviting them to come back out and come and see a full presentation where they can connect with people and ask questions. Some that are still not comfortable on showing up at these in-home presentations. Some of you will have outdoor events. Then we will also have Zoom. So we wanted to make sure that that's available. So you'll see that we're up to a lot of things. And tonight's session is really to help you have great conversations with people and have a little bit of insight under your belt on the value that you're going to be delivering to people. And of course, the website and all that stuff, which is available on these sheets, the ribocysteine.com. So it's going to help you as well. So yeah, that's it, Chris, for this evening. Thanks so much, Bobbi, for your contribution and everything that we're doing. We've all decided we're getting back out there again and stepping up in our games and reconnecting with people. And we had one, Barbara Ann and Paul and Linda and Bill had an event Saturday, and we had a blast. Marie Paul was there. Yeah, we had such a blast. Bill is there as well. We had a hula hoop contest, and one of the girls that's showing up that won the hula hoop contest. Yeah, I'm sure that she's going to check out this session tonight. But she's a competitive gymnast and a coach, so she was very impressed. She's a personal trainer of Bill and Linda. So yeah, you got to create things and make some fun with it as well, not just about, the technical part of it. Hula hoops are going to be at every single show that I'm doing because it draws attention and it gets the kids over when we want to talk to their parents, right? So you got to be creative.
Brilliant. Sorry, I was just responding here. Okay, folks, so we'll end on this note. And I just wanted to say hi to Joe Guanamor from the Philippines, Triple Diamond. Thanks for joining us. It's really nice on Facebook Live. So again, folks, the information will be available. Just give me, till tomorrow to make sure that the file is uploaded, and take advantage of these tools. And I hope that you're going to take to heart this information, the suggestion we made at the end to be prepared to have people leaving with products. I'm telling you, we have such an important story to share. So we got to get out of our comfort zone. We've been, 2.5 years now, going to almost 3 years now, very comfortable at home. Now we need to go out. We need to talk to people. We need to let the world know what this is all about. And I'm telling you, you're doing the world a favor. In the process, you will definitely benefit. So everybody have yourself a wonderful evening. And thank you so much, Bobbi, again, and everyone. And bye for now.